Welcome aboard. This is the Miles to Go podcast. And now here's your host, Ed Pizza.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Miles to Go podcast. Mr. Kerr and I were sitting here trying to think of new ways to make the show fun and exciting. And when we ran out of those ideas, we came up with some other ideas. There wasn't a whole lot of travel news out. So we were going to record earlier in the week because Richard was going to go away camping. Brief segue, it doesn't seem like you went away camping.
No, turns out all the state parks for spring break were full, and then my daughter had a noon soccer game on Saturday that we had to be within the region for, so all the campgrounds that were drivable back for the soccer game were taken up, so it just didn't happen. So soccer it was.
I'm saddened to hear that you didn't get to go camping.
I am too, man. I really was looking forward to sitting out in the woods doing nothing with no cell service. It was going to be great.
Yeah, I bet it was. I'm saddened. I really am. Can't you tell?
Yeah, I could tell you just miss those days in the RV.
I do miss those days in the RV. By the way, I think it's worth reporting before you call it out, because I'm sure you will. But today is the closest I will ever be to feeling like a professional sports star, because you see these guys, when they're getting ready, and gals, when they're getting ready for a big game, and the trainers come out and they're stretching their legs and they're helping them, get flexed up and get ready for the game. And I'm only in this chair today because of my wife, because I pulled my back lifting like a 1 pound piece of kindling earlier in the week and couldn't move my feet as I'm standing there. So I call her from the phone, honey, I need your help. So she comes out, takes me like 30 minutes to get me into the house, down on the floor, and then my wife has a background in exercise physiology. So she starts like twisting legs and all kinds of stuff and has been doing this every day. And so the only reason I can sit in this chair right now is because she beat me up well enough that I should be able to sit for 30 minutes without some level of excruciating pain. So here's your moment to call me old.
So to recap, Ed feels the most like a professional athlete because he hurt his back lifting a 1 pound piece of kindling. Okay. All right, man. If that's your definition.
Close I'm going to get, man. Close I'm going to get is somebody stretching me out, man, because that's as good as it's going to get over here. I am
stories of getting old and how people hurt their backs. As you said yesterday, it's never a good story. It's always, I think
there's never a noble story about hurting your back. What was Howie's story?
He hurt his back getting a plate out of the cabinet and had to miss a wedding.
Yeah. Yeah. It's never that you were like saving a cat from getting hit by a car or rescuing a kid from falling or anything like that. It's always, it's always the silly, stupid stuff. So,
yeah, if it's my back or the cat, I hate to say it, but the cat's gonna take that one.
So you're saying you're a dog person?
I'm actually not. I am a cat guy. And everybody's gonna be like, "What? He's a cat guy?" Yeah, I grew up with cats, not dogs.
Well, you should have a cat lick that,
what
excuse for a beard off of your cheek. So
I get the same stuff I got all the time. What are you talking about?
I know. It's just a shame that you're actually not old enough to grow real facial hair like a real man.
It used to be a lot more noticeable, but now that it has significant gray in it, it looks not as robust as it used to, thanks to the salt and pepper quickly coming in.
Robust, I like that. Salt and pepper. Well, yeah, I'm more salt than pepper right now, so I can't really say much there. But anyway, we talked about a couple things, and we talked about this in the Slack community as well. Richard came up with this idea that he and I could tell some entertaining travel stories, which is what we're going to do today, because there's not a ton of really good travel news out there. We're also going to do some deeper dives in some destinations that came up as a suggestion in the Slack community, and we're also going to bring back the final 2 pennies, a segment a lot of folks liked back when I used to do the show mostly solo. Except I'm gonna loan one of my pennies to Richard, as he said in pre-show, with interest, so that he can close, and we'll take turns doing the final 2 pennies. But a couple of housekeeping notes, and one of them involves the Navy, Mr. Kerr. We'll get there in just a second. Mr. Kerr likes to throw curveballs at me, but I got one for him. Yep.
Trying to find my cool Navy stuff behind me.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there is. I see planes too, and I see some Delt houses. Anyway, We got a nice 5-star review after getting beat up pretty bad by the people who didn't like the built ding on the Apple Podcast. Hawaiian Tar Heel, who, if he does root for the Tar Heels, roots for the wrong shade of blue, says, I look forward every week to your new episodes. Nice to hear your discussions on award travels. Sounds like the both of you have balanced family lives, which I appreciate. I think that's the first time anybody's ever called my life balanced, but we're going to go with it. Being an empty nester now, I am listening even more attentively so I can maximize my award travels and points accumulation. Appreciate your insights on hotels and car rentals as well. Hawaiian Tar Heel, thank you for listening. Thank you for that awesome review. Guys, if you do have just 30 seconds, you can hit the button in the show notes to rate the show. You can rate us on YouTube. You can rate us on Spotify. You can rate us on Apple Podcasts. Any of those things helps us out a ton, get the show recognized. As far as how to find us, he is at Kerpoints on all those social media channels. I am at Pizza in Motion. And on TikTok and Instagram, you can find the podcast at Miles to Go Podcast. Lots of good videos that Auburn puts together, making you and I look sometimes smart, sometimes silly, sometimes stupid, sometimes all three in one video.
Well, to be fair, they're all true about us. So
they are all true.
We are true. Hey, have you seen your fake Instagram account for Piazzarello that showed up this week? You should go.
Is there really what?
You should go check out Piazzarello live on Instagram, ladies and gentlemen. Please go follow that account and make sure you give it lots of love. I don't know where those people are sourcing those pictures, but it's a good time.
Has fake Kerpoints weighed in on it yet?
I don't know. I muted fake Kerpoints a long time ago. He had the opportunity to be funny, and
he did have the opportunity to be funny, and instead we get the original. We get you being funny. So
yeah, funny looking. Well,
as my son likes to say, he walks around the house sometimes quoting you, and he likes to say, "You're funny, but looks aren't everything." And I'm reminded of my special time with you every week.
Our special time.
Yeah, there you go. If you want to email the show, pizzainmotion.com is going to get it done. And then we have a service where you can text us or leave us a voicemail, and we will read your voicemails or play your voicemails live on the show. 571-293-6659. Lastly, like we talked about with the Slack community, for a few bucks a month, you can participate in the Slack community. We try to do a happy hour just about every week, and we've got some meetups coming up. There's also a rumor that we're going to have a barbecue at Ed's house in the summertime. Just haven't told my wife that yet. Since she doesn't listen to the show, we're great. So as long as Auburn doesn't clip this and put it into an Instagram 1-minute clip for my wife to watch, she'll have no idea that a bunch of Points and Miles nerds are showing up to our house at some point in the summer. So
wouldn't be the first time.
All right, last bit of housekeeping, and I think it's almost maybe a little bit disrespectful to call this housekeeping, but I didn't want to forget to mention it. Walked downstairs this morning. My wife is a big Good Morning America fan. I can give or take it, but usually the stuff that they cover isn't necessarily the sort of news I'm looking to digest. But this morning they actually covered something that I think was pretty newsworthy. This morning, or actually yesterday, Lou Conter, who was the final survivor of the USS Arizona, passed away. 102 years old. 102 years old.
Saw Lieutenant Commander Conter and read his story. Super cool stuff.
Yeah, if you have time to Google his story, I think it's pretty cool stuff. I think getting to see the USS Arizona memorial site for the first time this summer when we went to Hawaii, it was very memorable. And I think my kids, maybe didn't quite grasp it at first before we went there, and now have a much better sense of it. And I knew that we were getting down to the very end in terms of number of survivors. But I think it's worth noting, it's a pretty dark page in our history that the last survivor of the USS Arizona has passed away, Lieutenant Commander Lou Conter.
He's got some YouTube videos when he's like 99, so i.e. just 3 years ago, telling his story. I watched some of those. Well worth it, ladies and gentlemen, to jump in your Americana history and see what these guys did.
Yep, I agree. All right. So with all that housekeeping aside, and with due respect to Lieutenant Commander Conter and all of his fellow sailors on the USS Arizona, let's talk travel stories, Mr. Kerr. And we drew straws before the show, and I told you get to go first.
Of sorts, yes. Yeah, man. We were thinking about it, like you said, talking about, hey, what should we do? We were going to have to record a little bit early in the week because of our collective schedules. And by the time the episode came out, I was like, some of these stories might be a week old in the cycle. So let's tell a story.
Here's a story of a guy named Richard.
Yeah, my kids don't know Gilligan Island. I got to watch that show. It's pretty good.
Yeah, that was the Brady Bunch, but sure, whatever.
Whatever. I'm not old enough to do that stuff.
No, neither one.
I did watch Gilligan's Island growing up. I also did not like...
But not the first time it was on. It was definitely reruns.
Yeah, definitely reruns. I did not like the Brady Bunch. I say that to my wife all the time. Man, we were really off on a tangent here. Speaking of islands, my story is all about my favorite island that I've ever visited, which was in 2017. Hard to believe 7 years ago, when I took the first commercial flight to the island of St. Helena.
Yeah.
This story, I'm still obsessed with this place 7 years later. I'm going to give you the brief recap and why and how you can go and visit today. So St. Helena, if you draw a line straight off the coast of Brazil towards the Horn of Africa, right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, you will probably miss it, but you should go on Google Maps and you can find the island of St. Helena. It is the middle of absolutely nowhere Atlantic Ocean, but it's a fascinating place for a lot of reasons. It is famous in history because that is where Napoleon was cast off until his death after losing essentially his reign in France. They said, hey, get out of there, and we're going to put you somewhere where you can't come back this time. I think if memory serves right, he was originally put on Gibraltar, but got off and came back, and now they're like, holy cow.
Gibraltar sounds familiar. Yeah.
This guy keeps coming back, so now we're going to put him in St. Helena. And the cool part about the story is until my airplane landed in 2017, prior to all of known history, the only way to get to the island was on Royal Mail ship or private ship. So I took the first commercial flight, which was by Airlink, which is kind of like a regional airline down in South Africa. And I was just absolutely fascinated by the story. I was doing freelance stuff for the Points guy. And I'd heard the story about trying to build an airport on the island of St. Helena for a long time. There are a couple other islands in the Atlantic Ocean. These are all British overseas territories. Ascension is the one that's had a Royal Air Force base for a long time and the place that people have flown, but they wanted to service the people of St. Helena by building an airport. And it was called the world's most useless airport because the population of St. Helena is relatively small. It's not a huge island, but it's not a tiny island. It's not like the most isolated inhabited place on Earth, Tristan da Cunha, which is kind of like grouped together with St. Helena. So they have one overseas governor that sees both overseas Tristan da Cunha and St. Helena and a few other little small uninhabited islands. But man, it's super cool. So they started this thing. It took like 20 years to build this. It was like massively over budget. They build the airport in St. Helena. And what do they find when they try and do the first test flights is that they have really not taken into account all of the winds and the wind shear on the brand new airport. Like they have videos of the first airplanes that can't land. Like they cannot land. The wind shear is so bad and they go, holy smokes. You know, what are we going to do? When you think about it, if you have the trade winds of the Atlantic Ocean with absolutely nothing to break it for thousands of miles.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you have an island. What do you think the winds are going to be like on this place? So they finally say, hey, this is, they do a few test flights and then we're scheduled. They put out, hey, you can buy tickets on the first commercial plane flight. I happened to see it somewhere. I emailed the editor of the Points guy and I said, can I please take this flight from Johannesburg, South Africa to St. Helena to be on the first commercial flight ever to land on this place on the planet? I'm just absolutely fascinated by it the more I read up on it. They had a Royal Mail ship, RMS St. Helena, that would service Johannesburg, or not Johannesburg, it's landlocked, Cape Town, and they go from Cape Town for like a 9-day journey out to the island, and people who needed medical care, supplies, anything had to do it by this Royal Mail ship. So the island was obviously very excited about commercial flights starting. So my editor's like, this sounds like a cool aviation geek thing. Sure enough, I fly out of, 2017, I don't remember where I was in the world, in Quantico, Virginia. Flew via Switzerland on Swiss Air down to Johannesburg, like got there the night before, slept right in the Intercontinental, and then woke up the next morning. And what I found out was you have to make a refueling stop. So you fly from Johannesburg at the time to Windhoek, Namibia. And you just get gas in Namibia right off the coast of the Atlantic Ocean, and you take off. And it is a special ETOPS rated Embraer E190. So we're not talking about a big airplane to fly out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
No, not a whole lot of cargo coming out, yeah.
And an ETOPS certified Embraer was the only pilots for Airlink at the time, the chief pilot, co-pilot, and then a mechanic that had to fly out with this because if something goes wrong, you got to obviously fix the plane there in St. Helena. They gave us a briefing, and they're like, hey, we're going to, we have enough gas to do 2 attempts, and then we have to fly back, and it's like 3 hours and some change off the coast of Namibia. And, everybody's pretty excited. Pretty cool, the little pomp and circumstance of Johannesburg. We take off, everybody kind of starts chatting, and I quickly realized that the vast majority of people here are media from the British and South African different outlets, and they start talking to me, and they look at me, and they're like, what is the weird American doing here on this flight? Like, I was the only American. I started telling them, like, oh, I just work for this website. I'm a big plane geek. Like, I think this is going to be fun. And they're like, man, you're crazy.
Yes.
Like, that's kind of weird. There were only a few people from St. Helena that were actually, like, using the flight as intended for the inaugural, where it was, like, the new veterinarian from the UK was coming out to, take her 2-year tour, however long they had to do it, and her husband. And like another person who happened to be about to get on the Royal Mail ship and from a doctor's appointment in South Africa. And they're like, hey, you can take the plane instead and be there in a few hours instead of 9 days or whatever. So they're like, awesome. But man, we land, and I'm telling you, I actually have I found on my old YouTube channel, I have to see if I find this, my old personal one. I took a video of the landing. And when I say like this place was just majestic, like you're flying forever and ever and ever, you're descending. And then, like, this island is just nothing like I've ever seen. It is mountainous and rocky and sheer cliffs on the majority of the island. So you're flying along, all of a sudden you catch cliffs, and then all of a sudden there's a runway. Like, you're going cliff, just unbelievable, like anything I've ever seen. And then runway. If you go just do a quick Google images search for St. Helena Airport, it's literally built, like, all the way on the south end of the island. It is just like they stuck a runway on top of the cliffs, which no wonder they had wind problems for whatever. We get there, the governor of St. Helena is there. She meets us at the bottom of the stairs. Everybody's kind of like apparently on this organized group media tour thing that I was like the only one not a part of. The governor's like, she finds out, like, we're just sitting in the airport terminal getting our passport stamp, which is the coolest passport stamp I have for St. Helena. And she's like, "Oh, Mr. Kerr, please come to my house tonight, for whatever thing they had going on." So like everybody, we just roll into the governor's house that night. We only had 24 hours. So at the time, the flight schedule was you could either stay for overnight because that plane overnighted and flew back, or you had to stay for a week. It was once a week flights. I think during peak summer season now they're doing 2 flights per week. So you don't have to stay the entire week. But the island itself, man, was just, again, it's sheer cliffs, arid, no vegetation whatsoever. But the second you go over the road from the airport towards the center of the island, it turns into lush rainforest. Like, it is another world upon itself. And thinking when you land, nobody has ever been to this island except by ship for all of history until we just landed here. All of the saints, the people that call themselves the saints of St. Helena, are there to greet us. The town throws a party that night. Like I said, we go to the governor's house. You see Napoleon's tomb. His house, Longwood House, where he died, is still there. Actually, still like a French consulate of sorts that has a French overseer there. His body is no longer on the island, but you can see where he was originally buried with the big French flag. They have a golf course. The capital of Jamestown is literally wedged between 2 cliffs. Like, you just have to go and Google this thing, man. The history was there. I had connected with a guy on Facebook at the time before to be my tour guide for the 24 hours. I'd gotten a little Airbnb because there's one hotel on the island now, but when we landed, there was only Airbnbs and they were working on a hotel. Man, it is unbelievable to think that this place exists in the world today. And I've continued to keep in touch with that tour guide. I continue to have some really good Twitter accounts to tell you what's going on the island. Google just laid a high-speed undersea cable, so they now have high-speed internet on the island as of 4 months ago. And it's just an unbelievable place, man. Like, I can't, like, the 24 hours, most impactful 24 hours I've ever had in travel, seeing everything that was there. I just, man, to think of these people, and then talking to the people, they had accents that I'd never heard. I'm talking to people who in their lifetime have never left St. Helena. Like, they have like some kind of work share program with the British Overseas Territories where like they can go get jobs on the Falkland Islands, which are the other islands out in the Atlantic off the coast of Argentina. Yep. So some of these people in their entire lives have only been in St. Helena and the Falkland Islands via ship until our plane shows up there, and you hear their stories, the accents like I've never seen before. Man, it was so, like, I would love, and I have planned for a long time to take the family back and explore all this. Like, it's just big enough where there's tons of things to explore. Very hospitable people. But if you don't know the history of St. Helena and you hadn't looked this up, and you can fly Airlink today. They don't do refueling in Namibia anymore. They do it somewhere else down there off the coast of Africa. But dude, it was incredible. Actually, up on my wall back here, they gave us a little certificate signed by the governor and the pilot that say first people to ever arrive on St. Helena via airplane. I've talked about it so many times, but like, that is what travel is about to me, is experiencing something that you would otherwise never experience or even knew about. Like, there are people listening to this who are like, St. Helena, what is this place? It was so impactful. And then, final fun fact, the oldest living land animal on the planet is Jonathan the tortoise, who resides in St. Helena. He is now well over 100 years old. I got to meet him and got to feed him, and he's like, you see pictures of him all the time, lives on the grounds of the governor's house. But these are the places literally caught in time until we arrived there, man. That it was just amazing. So there was a point where Airlink became partners with United. You could redeem United miles actually to St. Helena.
I remember that, yeah.
I don't think it's still available anymore, seats, but if you can get it, if you can get that flight, if you're looking for something way off the beaten path to go see what this planet is about, highly recommend it.
Do you remember how much you paid for the flight?
I think because it was the inaugural, I want to say it was something like $700 round trip, which for that experience, whatever. And then everything on the island is incredibly cheap because it's all subsidized by the British government heavily. Like, everything was, which you would be a little bit counterintuitive because you're like, everything's got to be shipped there. But I think because nobody there can really make much of a living outside of basic government jobs, that they have to subsidize it. So it was very affordable. But it is now airport code HLE, St. Helena. Again, if you haven't done a Google image search of this island, this airport, read the story, please go and do it because it was just fantastic.
Yeah, they actually Airlink lists a whole slew of towns, but you took off from Joburg?
Mm-hmm. We did Johannesburg, and then on the way back, we actually stopped in Cape Town and then back to Johannesburg.
So if I were to want to go next week, see what the demand is like.
And St. Helena Tourism on Twitter is actually a great Twitter handle that I follow just to see what people are doing in these kinds of places in the world versus what you're doing in your every usual day-to-day business.
ZAR is the rand, right? Is that the currency?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Actually, but on St. Helena, so you got to buy the plane ticket in South African, but then they actually have their own money. It's the St. Helena pound, and I saved a few of those.
Yes. Yeah, you should. Definitely should do that.
Yeah.
So let's go here. And if I were to buy a flight right now for next week, it would be about $1,200 round trip.
From
Joburg to...
From Johannesburg, St. Helena?
Joburg to St. Helena and back. So it looks like it's back to once a week. Maybe it's seasonal that they do more than one, but they've got a flight on the 13th for 14,000 and change Rand, and then 9,000 and change Rand discount on the way back.
Maybe my research project should be who Airlink partners with, so that you can go and redeem miles for this, or just use the old Capital One miles. And it was
Capital One miles sounds pretty darn easy to me, although that's a pretty hefty price to pay. So now I got to find a mileage run to Joburg, and then a bunch of Capital Adventure miles, so I can have the same line and dot that Richard does.
Yep.
Cool story, man. I remember you going, and I don't know that you and I have ever talked about it, but that would be, if you were still living in Quantico, that would be like right back in those points jock days where you said that I blew you off. Good thing that's not video proof of me blowing you off.
Yeah, true that. All right, so that's my story off to the beaten path in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. What say you, Mr. Pizzarella? Which direction are you going to go?
I thought about this, and maybe it's just because I've been dealing with all the back pain and everything. I couldn't come up with a lot of entertaining stories. The one I came up with, I think, is entertaining only because it makes fun of me. But as a native New Yorker, it was one of the very few times I've broken the cardinal rules of being a native New Yorker. I was in Paris. Gosh, I'm trying to remember when this was. I think it was 2019, maybe 2018. Anyway, it was a fairly unique experience for me in that I was actually performing a wedding ceremony. A friend of mine, the guy that I host the other podcast with, Results Junkies, Paul Singh, and his wife now, Dana, were getting married. They decided they were going to do a destination wedding in Paris, and they were staying at, God, now I'm going to blank on the hotel, but one of the stunningly beautiful hotels right near the Eiffel Tower in Paris. And they were doing, like the pictures all over Paris and all the cool places. And, we flew over in business class, and they were drinking champagne while I was sleeping. And it was a whole cool thing, but it was a really sort of like a bang bang trip, because it was right after Thanksgiving, and we were going to go for like 3 or 4 days. And so I got my license to perform the ceremony, the whole bit, but rooms were not cheap in Paris at that time. And I was trying to use points, and I don't remember where I was staying. It was a Marriott property at the time. But anyway, once the ceremony was done, I was going to fly out the following morning after the ceremony. And so I just, I think that the hotels at Charles de Gaulle Airport are disgustingly cheap. And they're also disgustingly cheap from a point standpoint. So I'm like, well, I'll just book a room at the airport. They're their hotel's connected. It's easy. I'll save a bunch of points that way, because, if I'm going to have a 9 or 10 a.m. flight, I don't have to fight the train in the morning. I wake up, roll into the airport, save, 20, 30,000 points. Got it. Okay. Well, just like you, Mr. Kerr, I've always been a man of the people, and I love public transportation, and getting to and from Charles de Gaulle Airport. If you haven't been to Paris, you could do it via Uber, but traffic's messy in Paris a decent amount of the time. And so I'm sure I'll botch the pronunciation of it, but there's a train station on the northern side of town called Gare du Nord, and there's a nonstop shuttle to the airport from there. And
I've taken that, yes.
Yeah. So I've got my bag, and I've got my backpack, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll just take the subway, which there's two of them. There's the RER, and then I forget what they call the other one. But anyway, I'll take the subway to Gare du Nord, and then I'll hop one of these trains to the airport. And so I walk up to the machines that sell tickets, and I've got my backpack sitting on top of my suitcase beside me. And a guy comes up to my left and pushes me and starts screaming at me in a foreign language. And as I'm turning, the native New Yorker in me goes, "Oh." And I turn to look at him, and I immediately swing back to the right, and I see the guy taking off with my backpack.
Gone.
And I take off after him, and he runs through this luggage shop, and I'm screaming at the luggage guy because the luggage guy won't let me through, and I fight through the luggage guy, and then I'm up the stairs and down the street, and I chase him for a couple blocks, and I got no shot.
If you had caught him, what were you going to do?
I have no clue. But here's the problem, and you learn your best travel lessons the hard way. The passport is in the backpack, along with the computer and everything else. And so it's like, well, now what the hell do I do? I call my wife. I'm I'm trying to figure things out. I'm I'm trying to see if I can, not that it's going to help any, but maybe because at that point you had Find My The Find My app for Apple. Maybe somebody tried to turn my laptop on. I'd see where it was. Like, I'm gonna go knock on someone's door. Hey, can I have my computer back? Like, all these stupid things are going through my head.
Bonjour.
It's dark out. And in all of this, I'm like, well, now, like, what the hell do I do? And so it's nighttime, so I can't go to the embassy. They're closed the whole bit, and so I start lining everything up to deal with like whatever's coming next, because I have no idea how long it takes to get a passport in a foreign country without it. And so I booked a room at the Westin Place Vendôme because that was right around the corner from the embassy. It was, like a 2-minute walk to the embassy. I called Marriott, canceled I think it might even been, no, it wasn't SPG. Called and canceled my room at the airport, the whole bit. And then I started booking airline tickets for the afternoon flight the following day, a flight the day after, and then a flight the day after.
Was your wallet still in your pocket?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like New Yorker was mostly intact. The thing that was the most valuable, the passport, in the backpack, was the passport. Like, if the passport had been in my pocket, like, look, I don't want my laptop stolen, but it's like, all right, it's a backpack at the laptop. Get on the plane, lick your wounds. You did something stupid. So, book a bunch of flights, and I get to the consulate. Consulate opens at, let's say, 8:00 in the morning, and at that point I have the flight booked for that morning, which is like a 10 or 11 a.m. departure, and then I have subsequent departures the next 3 days. And I think I might have had an afternoon flight booked. And so I'm first in line for the consulate. I'm there an hour before they open because I couldn't sleep. Like, I'm like, how am I going to sleep at this point? I'm like, I have no idea when I'm getting home.
Impressed the hotel let you check in without a passport.
Yes. No, when I called the Marriott desk, I'm like, you're going to need to explain to them why I don't have my passport.
Yep.
And they did, and they got me all checked in. I do remember thank you for pointing that out. I completely forgot about that. First in line at the embassy. It's dark out. I'm there an hour before they open because I want to make sure I'm first. And a couple of American soldiers,
a couple Marines from the Marine Security Detachment staring at you.
Why are you here so early? And I tell them, and of course they give me the like, you're an idiot look. And like I'm an idiot. So I get in, and it's sort of like your standard DMV. Beautiful building though. Standard DMV where it's like there's different lines for different things, and they have a photo booth and a copier and all that. So you actually can do everything you need to get a passport there. But like, so they start, like, there's a handful of people, and I don't get picked first because whatever they have is more urgent. They go to a different line. And finally somebody calls me up, and I had to fill out some forms ahead of time, and I took some pictures, and I, like, doing all my things sitting in the chair, and the guy like takes all my things, and I'm a little bit nervous because I've never done this before. And so I just I go, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. I'm just trying to figure some stuff out here. I don't know how long this process takes. And I booked some flights to try and get home. I don't know how long it's going to be before you'll be able to issue me a passport. And he says, well, what time's your flight today? And, I always overshare. And so I'm like, well, I have this flight this morning, and then I got this other one the next day. And he goes, and he looks at his watch, and it's like, I don't know, 20 after 8 or something like that. And he says, you have an 11 a.m. flight? You'll make it. And I'm like, what? And he goes it back, and 18 minutes later, comes back out with a brand new passport and hands it to me. And he says, you should go quickly. I had no idea. I had no idea you could get a passport that quickly, but I got a passport in under 20 minutes. They issued me, it was a whole thing. It looked exactly like a normal passport, just had less pages in it. And then there was a form in there that I had to present to a passport office when I got home to get a full replacement. But somehow, after all that, after getting my backpack stolen, the whole bit, the embassy bailed me out, and I didn't even miss my flight home. Cost me some extra points to stay downtown. Lost a night's sleep because I'm an idiot. But yeah, that's my laugh at me, self-deprecating humor for the day.
In a situation like that, I've taken pictures of all of our passports and stored it to the cloud in my favorites, so I can. Does that help actually? When you get to the embassy and you're like, I have a picture of my stolen passport. Are they like, okay? I've always wondered why people say that. Like, I imagine there's somewhere it could help, but I've always wondered why.
I did show him the picture of my passport, and it was helpful that I had the passport number. That was the only thing he took off of it was the number. So I mean, maybe the picture helps, maybe it doesn't, but definitely knowing your passport number. And you bring up a really good point. I keep all that stuff locked in my password protector, 1Password. It did help me there. I did have my driver's license as well, which was certainly helpful. So I think the thing that surprised me the most about the process, just given how inefficient our government can be at times, I really thought I'd have to present my original certificates to go get a replacement passport. Like, I'd have to prove I was me once I got back to the U.S. And the temporary passport and this like this one piece of paper, which I still have, like form whatever, like that temporary passport and the paper was all I needed to get another passport.
There's been some sticky situations where I've had to help people who have lost passports or some weird stuff has happened. It has definitely not been an 18-minute turnaround. So
I'm still to this day still stunned, and I would caution anybody out there who decides they want to lose their passport. If you think you're going to get it replaced in 20 minutes, I would not try it.
No, I've only had to go to a embassy or consulate one time, and that was actually to get Thomas's birth certificate when he was born in Japan. We had to go to the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo and get his little, actually the nicest piece of government paper I've ever seen. It's a certificate of overseas birth that they give you, and we had to go there. But
That's
it was
right,
more like
overseas, yeah.
It was more like a security compound than which I guess these days makes sense, than a nice looking DMV or anything like that.
So he's a Japanese dreamer since he was born overseas?
Was a dreamer.
Let's not get into that. Let's not cross the political.
I know what that is. Yeah. But no, he does not have Japanese citizenship, nor does he have a path to Japanese citizenship. The Japanese do not play that game. They're like, we don't care you were born here. You're an American. You cannot be a Japanese citizen.
Well, I'll be interested to see what people think of our stories this week and whether this is an interesting thing to fold into the episode. I definitely want to do some destination stuff, including I think it's a great excuse to get our buddy Summer back on so we can all talk a little bit Hawaii, since she just did a Hawaii trip. You've been a number of times. And now that I've been, we can all actually talk about it from a somewhat knowledgeable standpoint.
I thought you were going to say the Great Wolf Lodge, but yeah, Hawaii's probably better.
I mean, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and Summer doesn't listen, so we'll have to ask her directly, but I'm going to guess she's never stepped foot in a Great Wolf Lodge.
Really? I think there's even one close to her hometown, I think.
No, that's that Hyatt that she always goes to, the Lazy Lost Pines. That's her version of Great Wolf Lodge, is a 3 to 4 star Hyatt Regency with an outdoor lazy river. That's her version.
I'm gonna
bet there's no Great Wolf Lodge. We will text as soon as we get done recording. It's early enough. It's late enough in the morning. She's awake.
Yeah.
All right, so you got any airplanes this week?
I'm going to the magical, wonderful place of dreams called Newark Airport.
Dream downtown?
Yes, double elite qualifying nights.
Double elite qualifying nights. All right.
Maybe this time.
Yeah, maybe. I'm headed to Vegas for a short trip. I'm not staying at the Rio, but I will tell you that cited in the wild after all the news of the $20 and $30 Rio rates, something's going on in Vegas, and the Rio is $163 a night this week.
So since quite a bit of discussion about the Rio the last couple of days in the Slack community.
Yes, there has been. But since Resorts World is $200 a night, nothing personal Hyatt, I'll get you next time. But for $40 extra a night, I will take my cushy, quiet room at the Conrad until the construction gets a little bit further down the Rio, down the road at the Rio, and there's less construction noise in the mornings. But still see potential in the property long term. But I'm going to wait for a little bit more of the story to get finished up there. So short trip to Vegas for me. And just to put you on the spot, Mr. Kerr, I got 2 questions to finish us off. LSU or Iowa?
Well, it's Iowa versus South Carolina. So
sorry, South Carolina. Yeah, South Carolina undefeated.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go South Carolina on this one. Love Caitlin Clark, super impressive what we've been watching the last few days and her games, but I think South Carolina's going to stay undefeated.
They seem to have a juggernaut of a team. And,
shout out Dawn Staley, head coach.
Yep. I'll say, too, I think having not watched a lot of women's basketball over the years, what I thought was most interesting about their game against UConn was another player on Iowa, Hannah Stolke, actually had the hot hand. And Caitlin, I think, did a really good job of continuing to pass her the ball frequently, because though the basket was about 3 times wider for Hannah than it was for Caitlin that night, and Hannah was hitting everything.
What's the second question?
UConn or Purdue?
Oh, man. UConn's just been unstoppable. I got Purdue in my bracket. Big fan of Zach Edey and watching him play, but UConn has just been unstoppable this year and looking the same in the tournament, so I think we're going to see UConn. While we were asking these questions, I did look up to see if Chase had responded to my secure message about the party pass being cut from the Ritz-Carlton card and my request for some kind of compensation. They have not responded still here 3 days later, so maybe they're still figuring out what they're going to do.
Live on the Miles to Go podcast, still no answer for Mr.
Still no answer.
But you'll keep us informed on that.
I surely will.
I'm going to go UConn. I was actually rooting for Alabama in this little betting thing that we have. We actually had some money on Alabama. If they had won, they kept the game close-ish for quite a while. My daughter would have won our NCAA bracket pool if Alabama had beat UConn.
Nice.
But I will say for the first time ever, I have won an NCAA Survivor pool on DraftKings. So
Is it 10 grand?
well, yeah, but I don't get the whole 10 grand because I did split the entry. I did it with two other my business partner and then a mutual friend of ours. We all split up a bunch of entries. So, but I will pocket a nice little bit of cash. But it was fun.
If Duke had gone into the Final Four, I would have won 2 different bracket challenges. But
Me too.
Because the other leaders had Purdue to win as well, there's no way that I can win any of them now. So
Yep. Yeah, but I do think it's going to be UConn in the final. They're just, it was one of those things where, like, if you watch the game, it was close for a while, and then all of a sudden they're like, you know what, we're just going to win, and we're going to put up 9 points in 86 seconds, and just put this thing out of reach, and they did. So,
and all of the Disney and sports haters are going to leave us the lovely reviews this week here on the Miles
Ding.
podcast. Yeah, we should get a few segments in about Bill, just really get everybody
fired up.
Yeah, get everybody triggered.
Triggering. Well, if you enjoyed this little bit of segment, hopefully you can go leave us a 5-star review and a rating, give us a thumbs up on YouTube or any of that fun stuff. If you didn't enjoy it, don't leave us a bad rating. We got enough of those with people that didn't like the bell. So just write us a note. Tell us what we could do to make the show better, and you will see 2 ugly white men back to record again next week. Maybe we'll try and see if we can track down Summer to talk a little bit Hawaii and raise the intellect and appearance of the show all in one fell swoop. Enjoy your time in your favorite of places as the weather changes in New York and the spring brings out the trees and the flowers. I will enjoy my very brief trip to Vegas and another wonderful round trip on United. We didn't talk. Can we talk United real quick?
We said goodbye twice, but we're going to bring up a new topic. Yep.
All right, fine. We're going to bring it back real quick. Like, what the heck? Like, so they delayed Investor Day and they canceled these 2 new flights, which I don't know a lot about Cebu, so I don't know demand for Cebu, but there's a lot of demand for Portugal. And they just dropped both of these. And I keep hearing about how business travel is down and leisure travel is where it's at. So, like, why would you cancel these routes? A lot of weird stuff happening at our airline, Mr. Kerr.
Yeah. The delay of Investor Day is the signal to me that this is beyond just something regular. And I had not seen the news about canceling the 2 routes. And it's just interesting. They put a whole lot of fanfare behind announcing these routes.
Yeah.
And there are people that have booked these tickets that are now going to have to connect in some very weird places, if at all.
It doesn't look like they like the article that I read on the Points Guy said that they delayed the route, but I can't find it. So I'm not sure that this is a delay, and it makes you wonder, like, was this influenced by regulators or are they just trying to reduce risk? Because this is a new airport for them, Faro in Portugal, and then so I think they don't have Cebu service. So all this stuff is just weird. And I know that there are issues with, like the FAA is leaning on them because of their service record recently. You and I have seen, just odd stuff with the airline as of late the last few months, but these are just weird things and they don't quite add up. And I know this is nerdy, but delaying your Investor Day and canceling flights a few weeks before they're supposed to start that were major announcements for the airline in a time where, like, where else are you going to put those planes? In theory, you're going to get more yield out of them. You're going to run more Cancun flights, more Vegas flights. Like, I just don't. I'm very confused, Mr. Kerr.
I'll take a Dreamliner on Atlanta to Newark if they ever want to throw that out there.
I would take a Dreamliner on Vegas, and the prices, there's definitely capacity, there's definitely demand there. So throw that on there. Like, instead of paying $700 for coach one way, I could pay $500.
Speaking of demand, number 12 on the upgrade list for me.
That's pretty
tomorrow.
disgusting.
Atlanta to Newark.
Disgusting.
Number 12 as a 1K out of Atlanta. Hadn't seen that.
Have you ever been
also
that?
no, I've never been.
Low?
No,
Yeah.
I've never been below number 6. And this is like a midday flight as well, where I've got to take meetings in them. So it's not like a Sunday night or a Monday morning flight.
Yeah,
that's a little bit weird. It is also my first flight back on the MAX 9 tomorrow with United. So I'm sure it'll be fine.
I think it'll be fine too. But why not? Why not panic about it just for a little? All right. Well, I think Jeremiah is probably wondering how many times I'm going to close the show before I actually close the show. But the United thing, I can't get it out of my head, and it just feels like there's something going on there. So more to come on that. I've got to finish getting our Japan trip planned. So I need to pick your brain some more. You were very helpful going through the list that my wife had put together. I much appreciate on that, but I need to get the rest of my hotels booked. Enjoy your double nights in New York this week. I will not enjoy any extra Hyatt nights as I work to get towards 150 this year and get my wife a little bit of Miraval, just like I think you're trying to do.
Yes, indeed.
All right, all that and a whole lot more until we upload again and close the show for the 3rd time. We've got miles to go. Here's a story of a guy named Richard.